The U.S. House of Representatives Select Committee on China is looking into U.S. investments in Chinese technology companies. The committee sent letters to 4 U.S. venture capital firms expressing concern over investments in artificial intelligence, quantum computing, and other advanced technologies. I spoke to the ranking member on the committee, Democratic Congressman Krishnamoorthi, about the investigation. Congressman, great to have you with us here in the studio. Thanks for joining us. So the House Select Committee on China has been looking into U.S. venture capital firms who are investing in Chinese tech, in particular in AI and military applications. What are the investments that most concern you here?
I think investments that go into AI or in quantum computing or semiconductors, because what we found is that some of those companies that American venture capital firms have invested in are also involved in military civil fusion endeavors. And also endeavors to crack down on the Uyghurs or to surveil people or surveil dissidents. And so, we don't want our money going into ventures that could harm our interests or our values.
What about U.S. national security interests? I mean, what is the exact concern there?
Sure. Well, with regard to our national security interests, some of that AI and that quantum computing and some of the semiconductor technology is going into like hypersonic missiles or into their nuclear program, or into other ways that kind of harm our interests. So we want to be careful about that too.
What are these companies saying about these investments?
Well, some of them have responded. Others are saying, well, the people that made those investments left the company a long time ago. Others are saying we've exited from those investments completely. And so we're still gathering the information. It's done on a voluntary basis right now, but we're looking forward to further cooperation from them.
I want to ask you about the larger policy landscape here, because the White House is considering an executive order that would restrict U.S. firms investing in Chinese semiconductors, also AI, quantum computing you mentioned. But we've also seen 2 U.S. senators who are working on legislation as well that would track investments in China, as you know. And Democratic Senator Bob Casey said the following, quote, "As a matter of national and economic security, we need greater insight into which of our nation's critical technological capabilities have been moved overseas and at what scale." Are you concerned that these competing initiatives, you have the White House with one approach, senators with another, that they might not create big bureaucratic hurdles for American companies that are looking to invest abroad?
Well, I think that, first of all, this is one of those areas where there's bipartisanship in the sense that, and bicameral bipartisanship. So there are Republicans, Democrats in the House and the Senate working along with the White House on what is kind of sensible legislation and policy going forward. So I think that's a good thing. But yes, we don't want a situation where we create confusion or regulatory hurdles that make it even more difficult to understand, what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. So we need to be cautious about that.
How can that be done? What approach should be taken here to make sure that those approaches are actually streamlined?
Well, I think that we have to make sure that, for instance, we're consulting with the White House on what they think is the right path forward. We're also consulting with the Senate. I think it's fair to say that the committees of jurisdiction in the House and the Senate are working together on this, and the White House is obviously giving its input. So hopefully we can come up with something that's sensible.
We've seen the news that the foreign minister, Qin Gang, has been replaced by Wang Yi after not being seen for a month. What do you think this means for U.S. efforts to stabilize the relationship with China?
It's a good question. We don't know what's going to happen with regard to their policy, although the person that was just removed also was kind of a wolf warrior diplomat. He was extremely hawkish in his tone toward the United States. So if his replacement is a little bit less hawkish, that might be a good thing. But we don't know yet how the policy is going to change. Wang Yi, as you know, is a very able diplomat. He's also very highly trusted by Xi Jinping. And so I'm not sure that there will be big changes. But I think all of this illustrates just the opacity, the lack of transparency about Chinese government and how you just don't know what the heck is going on sometimes within the CCP. It's not exactly a liberal democratic organization.
I also want to ask you about Russia's war in Ukraine. And we've seen the White House confirming today that Trevor Reed, who was freed from Russia in a prisoner exchange last year, was injured while fighting in Ukraine. And the White House had warned U.S. citizens about the risks of getting involved in fighting in Ukraine. Is it appropriate for him to be fighting there?
Well, I think that individual American citizens felt so strongly and feel so strongly about the war in Ukraine that they are going to go and do, what their heart commands, and I don't think we're going to be able to stop that. Obviously, we have our advisories, our travel advisories, and so forth in place, which kind of urges caution. But at the same time, we have a tremendous amount of passion behind the positions supporting Ukraine, even in places like my own constituency, which has a huge Ukrainian American population.
And Congressman, I also want to ask you about President Biden announcing the establishment of a national monument to Emmett Till, both in Illinois and Mississippi. What does this mean to Illinois?
Well, as you know, Emmett Till was from Chicago. He was murdered in August 1955 when he was just visiting his family down south. And as you know, his mother, after his murder, made the courageous decision to have an open casket in Chicago during his funeral so that the world could see how this mob had so disfigured her son out of hatred. And in some ways, it catalyzed the civil rights movement. It shocked the conscience of a nation that such discrimination and bigotry and prejudice could lead to the death of this young boy in this manner. And so I think it's very important, obviously, for Illinois, where the family was from, but also the South. And, contrast that with what you're seeing in Florida, where they're actually passing laws that say that it's okay to teach children in Florida that slavery somehow benefited African Americans. And you'll see kind of the significance of reminding people of the history of what has happened to African Americans in this country.
Congressman, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.